In a world more connected than ever before, millions of people quietly feel disconnected from themselves. Every day begins the same way. A screen lights up, notifications arrive, information floods the mind before the day has even truly begun. We move quickly, we consume endlessly. We scroll through other people's thoughts, emotions, opinions, fears, ambitions, and identities. Until eventually, many people can no longer hear their own. Modern life has become louder, faster, and more demanding than at any other point in human history. And yet, beneath the surface of productivity, entertainment, and constant stimulation, something deeper is happening. People are exhausted. Attention is fragmented. Meaning feels harder to hold on to. Relationships feel thinner. Conversations feel shorter. And even moments of rest no longer feel truly restful. Many people are surviving modern life without fully understanding what modern life is slowly doing to them. But the greatest changes in human behavior rarely happen all at once. They happen quietly, through repetition, through conditioning, through invisible emotional patterns repeated day after day, year after year. And eventually, those patterns begin shaping entire lives. Over the course of these 3 series, The Human Pattern, The Invisible Habits, and The Wake-Up Call, we explored a difficult question. What happens to human beings when distraction becomes a lifestyle and unconscious living becomes normal? Because beneath politics, technology, entertainment, and modern culture, there is another story unfolding. A human story, a psychological story. A story about identity, emotion, attention, meaning, and the quiet struggle to remain fully human in an increasingly artificial world. Part 1. The Human Pattern. Human beings are shaped by patterns far more than most people realize. Not only habits of behavior, but habits of thought, habits of emotion, habits of reaction, habits inherited from childhood, culture, trauma, fear, comparison, and social conditioning. Many people spend years believing they are making conscious choices, while unconsciously repeating emotional patterns they never truly examined. Patterns of avoidance, patterns of emotional suppression, patterns of seeking validation, patterns of people-pleasing, patterns of self-doubt. And in modern society, those patterns are constantly reinforced. A culture built around speed leaves very little room for reflection. A culture obsessed with appearance often disconnects people from authenticity. A culture flooded with information can create the illusion of wisdom, while quietly weakening depth, patience, and critical thought. Many people know more than ever before, but feel less certain about who they are. And perhaps that is one of the greatest contradictions of modern life. We have endless access to the outside world, but increasingly limited connection to the inner world. So people compensate. Some lose themselves in constant entertainment. Others lose themselves in work. Some lose themselves in endless self-improvement without ever confronting the deeper emotional wounds underneath. And many people slowly become strangers to themselves without even noticing it happening. Because fragmentation rarely feels dramatic in the moment. It feels normal. That is what makes unconscious living so dangerous. It rarely announces itself loudly. It simply becomes routine. Part 2. The Invisible Habits. Most lives are not destroyed by one catastrophic decision. They are shaped gradually, by small, repeated behaviors that seem insignificant at first. Invisible habits. The habit of avoiding silence. The habit of numbing emotion instead of processing it. The habit of reaching for distraction every time discomfort appears. The habit of consuming endlessly without reflecting deeply. The habit of postponing meaningful change until someday. Over time, these habits begin shaping attention itself, and attention may be one of the most valuable human resources left, because whatever repeatedly captures attention eventually influences identity. Modern systems understand this very well. Entire industries compete for human attention every second of every day, not because attention is harmless, but because attention shapes behavior. Behavior shapes habits. Habits shape character, and character shapes destiny. But the most dangerous habits are often the ones society normalizes. constant stimulation, emotional avoidance, reactive living, comparison culture, performative identity, the inability to sit quietly without reaching for a screen. Many people are overstimulated, yet emotionally undernourished, surrounded by content, yet starving for meaning, connected digitally, yet isolated psychologically. And slowly, without realizing it, people begin losing their capacity for depth. Depth of thought, depth of conversation, depth of emotion, depth of presence. Everything becomes immediate. Fast entertainment, fast outrage, fast opinions, fast validation. But human growth has never been fast. Wisdom has never been fast. Healing has never been fast. And perhaps this is why so many people feel internally divided. Because the human nervous system was not designed for permanent stimulation. It was designed for rhythm, for reflection, for recovery, for meaningful human connection. But modern life rarely rewards stillness. So many people continue running, without ever asking where they are actually going. And maybe that is the real crisis of modern life. Not simply that the world has become noisy, but that many people have become disconnected from their own inner signal beneath the noise. Because once attention is constantly fragmented, clarity becomes difficult. And without clarity, people become easier to influence, easier to manipulate, and easier to disconnect from themselves. But awareness changes things. The moment a person begins noticing the pattern begins losing some of its power. And that is where the next stage begins. Part 3. The wake-up call. A wake-up call is rarely comfortable. Sometimes it arrives through exhaustion, sometimes through emotional burnout, sometimes through loneliness, sometimes through anxiety, grief, failure, or the quiet realization that something about life no longer feels meaningful. But for many people, awakening begins with a simple question. What kind of life am I actually building? Not the life being advertised, not the life being performed online, not the life expected by society, but the real life unfolding quietly through daily choices, habits, attention, and values. Awareness changes behavior because awareness interrupts automation. People begin noticing how certain environments affect their mind, how certain habits weaken their focus, how constant distraction damages emotional presence, how unconscious routines slowly shape emotional identity. And slowly, something begins changing. People become more intentional, more reflective, more emotionally honest, more protective of their attention, more aware of what truly deserves energy. Because waking up is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming conscious of what shapes your mind, what controls your attention, what drains your energy, what deepens your humanity, and what quietly pulls you away from yourself. And perhaps real growth begins there, not in dramatic transformation, but in smaller daily acts of awareness repeated consistently over time. Turning down the noise, creating space for reflection, learning to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it immediately, rebuilding attention, rebuilding depth, rebuilding intentional living. Because despite everything modern life has changed, human beings still need meaning, still need connection, still need emotional truth, still need purpose. And maybe the goal is not to escape the modern world completely, but to learn how to live inside it without losing ourselves to it. Final reflection. The modern human condition is complicated. Many people are overwhelmed, distracted, emotionally exhausted, and searching for clarity in a world constantly competing for their attention. But awareness remains powerful, because once people begin recognizing the patterns shaping their lives, change becomes possible. And perhaps that is what this journey has always been about. Not fear, not perfection, not pretending to have all the answers, but learning to see clearly, to think deeply, to live more consciously, and to remember that beneath all the noise of modern life, there is still a human being searching for meaning, connection, and truth. Maybe that human being is all of us. And maybe the first real step forward is finally paying attention. If these ideas resonate with you, explore the full series, The Human Pattern, The Invisible Habits, and the Wake Up Call series. All on my channel. Wellnesshubnest. Because understanding ourselves may be one of the most important challenges of modern life.